There is a photograph from September 15, 2008 that most people have never seen. It shows a man in an expensive suit standing on the sidewalk outside 745 7th Avenue in Manhattan. He is holding a cardboard box. Inside that box is everything he could carry from his desk. A family photo, a coffee mug, a small plant that someone had given him for his birthday. Behind him, through the glass doors, you can see security guards. They are not letting anyone back inside. The building was Lehman Brothers, and by 4 o'clock that afternoon, after 158 years in business, it no longer existed. I want you to imagine something. Imagine waking up on a Tuesday morning. You shower, you put on your tie, you kiss your kids goodbye. You commute into the city, the same way you have for 15 years. You sit down at your desk at one of the most prestigious financial institutions in the history of the world, and by the time the sun sets, your job is gone. Your stock options are worthless. Your retirement account, which was heavily invested in company shares, has lost most of its value. The security guard knows your name, but he still can't let you back upstairs to get your jacket. This is not a movie. This is not a metaphor. This happened to 25,000 people on the same day. $600 billion in assets vanished overnight. To put that in perspective, that is more than the entire economy of Sweden. Gone. Not slowly, not gradually, between a Sunday evening and a Monday morning. The next day, the Dow Jones dropped nearly 500 points. Credit markets froze completely. This means that companies with billions of dollars in revenue could not borrow money to pay their own employees. Banks stopped lending to each other. Money, the one thing everyone assumed would always be there, simply stopped moving. Within weeks, the panic spread. People tried to withdraw money from money market funds, which were supposed to be as safe as cash. Some of those funds couldn't give people their money back. Let me say that again. People who thought they had money in the safest possible place discovered that they could not access it. Now, I want to tell you about a woman named Margaret. Margaret was 67 years old in the summer of 2008. She had worked as a school teacher for 41 years. She had done everything right. She had saved diligently. She had invested in a diversified portfolio. She had consulted financial advisors and followed their recommendations. In July of 2008, Margaret retired. She threw herself a small party. Her grandchildren made a banner. It said, "Happy retirement, Grandma." By February of 2009, her portfolio had lost 43% of its value. Margaret went back to work at age 70, not because she wanted to, because she had no other choice. The money she had spent 4 decades accumulating was suddenly not enough. The math no longer worked. And here is the part that stays with me. Margaret did not make a mistake. She did not gamble. She did not speculate on risky investments. She simply retired at the wrong time. The economy decided to collapse 6 weeks after she stopped working. I could tell you 100 stories like this. I could tell you about the young people who graduated from college in 2009 and entered the worst job market since the Great Depression. Studies now show that people who graduate into recessions earn less money for the next 20 years of their careers. Not 5 years, not 10, 20. I could tell you about the small business owners who had thriving restaurants and shops, who watched their credit lines disappear overnight, who could not pay their suppliers, who closed their doors within 90 days. But here is what all of these stories have in common. Every single one of these people asked the same question: how did I not see this coming? And the answer, the honest answer, is that almost nobody sees it coming. Not the first time, not the 10th time. Every generation experiences a financial crisis that feels unprecedented, that feels like the end of the world, that feels like something that could never have been predicted. And yet, these crises keep happening. There is a famous quote that is often attributed to Mark Twain, though he probably never said it. It goes, "History does not repeat itself, but it often rhymes." In 1929, the stock market crashed. Over the next 3 years, it fell by nearly 90%. Families lost everything. There were breadlines, there were bank runs. There were people who had been wealthy on a Friday and were penniless by Monday. It took 25 years for the stock market to return to its 1929 peak. And you might think, well, that was a different era. We have learned since then. We have regulations now, we have technology, we have sophisticated financial instruments. And then 2008 happened, and the same fear, the same panic, the same people standing on sidewalks with cardboard boxes, wondering what went wrong. History does not repeat, but it echoes, and those who do not hear it coming are always the ones standing in the fire. Now, I want to shift your attention from the past to the present. Because right now, as you listen to this, there is fear in the air. You can feel it. Maybe you have felt it for months. Inflation, rising interest rates, layoffs at major companies, headlines that seem designed to make your stomach turn, economists arguing on television, social media feeds filled with predictions of doom. And the question on everyone's mind is the same question that was on everyone's mind in 2008 and in 1929, and in every financial crisis before that. Is it coming? And if so, when? Here is what I want to offer you. Not a prediction. I do not have one. Nobody does, despite what they claim. What I want to offer you is a different way of thinking about what recessions are. In the summer of 1988, Yellowstone National Park experienced the largest wildfire in its recorded history. Over 800,000 acres burned. The images were devastating. Blackened trees stretching to the horizon, smoke that could be seen from space, animals fleeing, rangers overwhelmed. The public reaction was outrage. How could this have happened? Why was the park not protected? But here is what most people did not understand at the time. For nearly a century before 1988, the policy in American national parks was total fire suppression. Every small fire was extinguished immediately. The goal was to protect the forest, to preserve it, exactly as it was. And on the surface, this seemed wise. Fires are destructive. Fires kill trees. Fires are dangerous, so put them out. Protect the forest. But here is what happens when you suppress every small fire for 100 years. Dead wood accumulates. Fallen branches pile up. The forest floor becomes dense with dry fuel. The ecosystem, which evolved to experience regular small fires, becomes overgrown, cluttered, fragile. And when a fire finally comes, and a fire always comes, it does not burn small, it burns catastrophic. You see, small fires are not the enemy of a healthy forest. They are part of a healthy forest. Small fires clear the forest floor. They remove dead wood. They return nutrients to the soil. They create space for new growth. Many species of trees, like the lodgepole pine, actually require fire to reproduce. Their pine cones only open in extreme heat. When you prevent small fires, you do not prevent destruction. You guarantee it. I want you to hold that image in your mind. Because the economy works the same way. Recessions are not bugs in the system. They are features of the system. Recessions clear out weak businesses. They correct overvaluation. They punish excessive debt. They force efficiency. They create space for new companies, new ideas, new growth. Some of the most successful companies in modern history were either founded or forged during recessions. Microsoft, Apple, Airbnb, Netflix. These companies did not succeed despite the hard times. In many ways, they succeeded because of them. The fire cleared the forest floor and new things grew. There is another way to think about this, and it comes from biology. When you get sick, truly sick, your body raises its temperature. You develop a fever, and a fever is deeply unpleasant. You feel awful. You cannot function. Everything hurts. But here is what a fever actually is. It is not the disease. It is your body's response to the disease. It is your immune system fighting back. The elevated temperature makes it harder for viruses and bacteria to survive. The discomfort you feel is the price of healing. A recession is the economy's fever. It is the system correcting itself. It is the market purging what does not work. It is painful, yes. It is disruptive. People suffer, and that suffering is real. But the alternative, a system that never corrects, that never clears out the dead wood, that suppresses every small fire until the fuel piles up to the sky would be far worse. So here is the shift I am asking you to make. Most people treat recessions like car accidents, random, unpredictable, unfair. They ask, how do I avoid it? How do I see it coming? How do I get out of the way? But these are the wrong questions. The right question is this: how do I make sure I am still standing when it is over? Because the storm will come, winter will arrive, the fire will burn. These are not possibilities to predict. They are certainties to prepare for. And that preparation, that mindset, is what separates the people who are destroyed by recessions from the people who emerge from them stronger than before. In the next part of this video, I am going to share with you the single most important mental framework I have ever encountered for navigating financial uncertainty. It is a paradox, it sounds like a contradiction, but once you understand it, you will never think about money the same way again. It goes like this: save like a pessimist, invest like an optimist. Let me explain what that means. Save like a pessimist, invest like an optimist. When you first hear this, it sounds like a contradiction. It sounds like I am asking you to be two different people at the same time, to believe that everything will fall apart, and also to believe that everything will be fine. How can you hold both of these ideas in your mind simultaneously? Let me explain. A pessimist looks at the world and sees danger. They see job loss, medical emergencies, market crashes. They see that bad. Things happen to good people, often without warning, often without reason. The pessimist saves money not because they are scared, but because they are honest. They understand that the future is unknowable, and that unknowable futures require preparation. An optimist looks at the world and sees progress. They see that despite wars and depressions and pandemics, human beings keep building. They see that the stock market, over any 50-year period in modern history, has gone up. They see that innovation continues, that problems get solved, that the long arc of civilization bends toward growth. The optimist invests not because they are naive, but because they have studied history. And history says, bet on the future. Now, here is the key insight. These are not contradictions. These are two different time horizons operating inside the same mind. The pessimist is thinking about the next 6 months, the next year. The short term, where anything can happen, where chaos reigns, where your assumptions can be shattered overnight. The optimist is thinking about the next 20 years, the next 40 years, the long term, where noise fades away and signal emerges, where compounding works its quiet magic, where patience is rewarded. You do not have to choose between fear and hope. You simply have to assign them to the right time horizons. There is an oak tree near my home that I think about often. It is over 200 years old. Its trunk is enormous. Its branches stretch wide enough to shade an entire yard. It has witnessed more history than any human alive today. And I sometimes wonder, how did this tree survive? Because in 200 years, that tree has endured dozens of brutal winters. It has been buried in snow. It has been lashed by wind. It has survived droughts where the soil cracked and nothing grew for months. It has been struck by lightning at least once, based on the scar running down its trunk. And yet, it kept growing. Here is what I realized about that tree. The oak does not survive winter by being optimistic about winter. It survives winter by preparing for it. In autumn, it pulls its resources inward. It drops its leaves. It slows its metabolism. It stores what it needs to endure the cold months ahead. The oak is a pessimist about winter. It expects the worst and it prepares accordingly. But the oak does not stop there, because when spring arrives, the oak does not remain huddled and defensive. It explodes with growth. It sends out new branches. It produces thousands of leaves. It reaches higher toward the sun. The oak is an optimist about spring. It bets everything on the coming warmth. This is the balance. This is the paradox resolved. The tree that only prepared for winter and never grew would be small and stunted. The tree that only grew and never prepared for winter would die in the first frost. But the tree that does both, that saves like a pessimist and grows like an optimist, becomes ancient. It becomes the thing that outlasts Everything else. Let me make this concrete. In the short term, the next 0 to 3 years, you should be a pessimist. This is the time horizon where recessions happen, where layoffs happen, where emergencies happen. In this window, you need safety. You need liquidity. You need cash that you can access without selling anything, without begging anyone, without waiting for a market to recover. In the long term, the next 10, 20, 30 years, you should be an optimist. This is the time horizon, where compounding happens, where growth happens, where wealth is actually built. In this window, you need exposure to the market. You need to be invested. You need to let time do its work. The danger is when people get these backwards. The pure optimist says, "The market always comes back. I will stay fully invested. I do not need much cash." And then they lose their job during a recession, and they are forced to sell their stocks at the worst possible moment, when prices are down 40%, just to pay their mortgage. They had no room for error. Their optimism destroyed them. The pure pessimist says, "Things feel too uncertain. I will wait until the economy stabilizes before I invest." And they wait, and they wait, and the years pass. And stability never comes because stability is an illusion. Meanwhile, they miss the recovery. They miss the growth. Their pessimism cost them decades of compounding. The pure optimist goes broke in the crash. The pure pessimist goes broke in the recovery. Both believed they were being smart. Both were destroyed by an incomplete philosophy. Now I want to give you a practical framework, a strategy you can actually use. It begins with a concept I call room for error. Room for error is the gap between your plan and your breaking point. It is the margin that lets you survive when your assumptions turn out to be wrong. Because here is the truth about every financial plan ever created. It is based on assumptions. You assume you will keep your job. You assume your health will hold. You assume the market will behave reasonably. You assume your expenses will stay predictable. And some of those assumptions will be wrong, not might be, will be. Room for error is what happens when the assumptions fail, and you are still standing. I want you to think about a deep-sea diver preparing for a dive. The dive is supposed to take 45 minutes. The diver calculates exactly how much oxygen they need for 45 minutes of breathing. And then they bring more. Much more. Why? Not because they expect the dive to go wrong, but because they know they cannot predict every variable. Maybe there is a current they did not anticipate. Maybe their equipment malfunctions briefly. Maybe they get disoriented and take longer to surface. The extra oxygen is not for the plan. The extra oxygen is for the deviation from the plan. Cash works the same way. There is a common saying in financial circles. You have probably heard it. Cash is trash. It earns nothing. Inflation erodes its value. Holding cash feels like falling behind while everyone else gets rich. And in a narrow mathematical sense, this is true. Over the last century, cash has underperformed stocks by an enormous margin. If you had invested $100 in the stock market in 1920, you would have far more money today than if you had kept it in a savings account. But this argument misses something fundamental. Cash does not earn returns. Cash earns options. Cash is what lets you not sell your stocks when they are down 40%. Cash is what lets you pay your mortgage when you lose your job. Cash is what lets you cover a medical emergency without going into debt. Cash is what lets you buy assets from panicking sellers when everyone else is running for the exits. The return on cash is not measured in interest. It is measured in the disasters you did not have to live through. Let me tell you about forced selling, because it is one of the most destructive forces in personal finance. Forced selling is when you have to sell an asset, not because you want to, not because the timing is right, but because you have no other choice. You need the money. Now, today, regardless of what the market is doing. This is how temporary losses become permanent losses. Imagine you bought a stock for $100. The market crashes, and that stock drops to $60. If you can wait, if you can hold, there is a very good chance that stock will recover. History says it almost certainly will. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but eventually. But if you are forced to sell at $60 because you need cash to survive, you lock in that 40% loss forever. You are no longer an investor riding out a temporary storm. You are a casualty. Cash prevents forced selling. Cash gives you the ability to wait, and the ability to wait is one of the most valuable assets you can own. So how much cash should you hold? There is no perfect formula, but here is how I think about it. First, you need an emergency fund, 6 to 12 months of essential expenses, non-negotiable. This is not an investment. This is insurance. This is the oxygen tank that lets you survive when the dive goes wrong. Second, you may want an opportunity fund, an additional 10 to 20% of your portfolio held in cash or near cash equivalents. This is the money that lets you buy when others are selling. This is the money that turns a crisis into an opportunity. Third, you need enough to sleep at night. This is personal. This is psychological. Some people feel comfortable with 3 months of expenses in cash. Some people need 2 years. There is no right answer. But if you are lying awake at 3 in the morning worrying about money, you do not have enough. The right amount of cash is not a number. It is a feeling. It is the feeling of clarity when everyone else is panicking. Here is something I want you to understand about wealthy people, not the flashy ones on social media, the truly wealthy, the ones who have built and preserved fortunes across decades. They almost always hold more cash than seems rational. Warren Buffett keeps billions of dollars in cash at Berkshire Hathaway. People have criticized him for this. They say he is missing out on returns. They say cash is a drag on performance. And Buffett says, I do not care. Because when the crash comes, I am the one with the oxygen. I am the one who can buy when everyone else is suffocating. The cash is not a wasted resource. It is my greatest strategic advantage. There is a psychological dimension to this as well. When you have adequate cash reserves, you make better decisions. You think more clearly. You do not panic sell at the bottom. You do not take desperate risks trying to recover losses. You can be patient because patience is affordable to you. Cash is an anchor in a storm. It does not make the storm stop, but it keeps you from drifting into the rocks. We have covered a lot of ground. We have talked about history. We have talked about philosophy. We have talked about practical strategy. But there is one more thing I want to leave you with. One final idea that ties everything together. It is the simplest idea and also the most important. Survival is the only thing that matters. Let me take you back to where we started. September 2008, Lehman Brothers. 25,000 people walking out of a building with cardboard boxes, not knowing if their world would ever make sense again. I told you about Margaret, the 67-year-old schoolteacher who retired in July, threw herself a small party, and watched 43% of her life savings disappear within 6 months. I want to tell you what happened next. The years after 2008 were brutal. Unemployment peaked at 10%. Millions of families lost their homes. The word recession was replaced by whispers of depression. Economists debated whether the entire financial system would collapse. And during those dark months, people made decisions. Some made decisions from desperation. Some made decisions from preparation. The people who had no cash reserves panicked. They sold their stocks at the bottom, March 2009, when the market was down over 50%. They locked in their losses permanently. They had no choice. The bills were due. The mortgage was due. Survival required sacrifice. But there was another group, a quieter group, people who had done something unfashionable in the years before the crash. They had saved like pessimists. They had kept cash on the sidelines. They had built room for error into their lives. These people did not have to sell. They could wait. Some of them, the ones with courage and clarity, actually bought more. They purchased stocks at prices that would never be seen again. Here is what happened over the next decade. By 2018, the S&P 500 had tripled from its 2009 low. Tripled. The people who survived, who held on, who had the oxygen to keep breathing through the fire, they became wealthier than they were before the crash ever happened. The market recovered. It always does. But not everyone was there to see it. This is the lesson that I keep returning to. The question was never, will the market recover? The question was always, will you be around to see it? Because the math of compounding is simple. Time plus patience plus exposure to growth equals wealth. But that equation has a prerequisite that nobody talks about. You have to survive long enough for the math to work. The greatest investors in history are not the ones who achieved the highest returns in a single year. They are the ones who achieved reasonable returns for an unreasonable amount of time. They stayed in the game, they endured, they did not die. Warren Buffett is not the richest investor in history because he has the best returns. There are traders who have beaten him in individual years. He is the richest because he has been investing for 80 years. 99% of his wealth came after his 50th birthday. Not from brilliance, from longevity. Survival is the ultimate strategy. Everything else is noise. So let me leave you with this. We have talked about recessions as forest fires, painful but necessary, clearing away the dead wood so new things can grow. We have talked about the paradox of pessimism and optimism, how they are not opposites but partners operating on different time horizons. We have talked about cash as oxygen, not an investment but a survival tool, the thing that lets you breathe when everyone else is suffocating. But underneath all of these ideas, there is something deeper, something I want you to carry with you long after this video ends. The reason we prepare for recessions is not really about money, it is about freedom. When you have savings, you are free to wait. When you have room for error, you are free to be patient. When you are not drowning in financial panic, you are free to think clearly, to act wisely, to be present with the people you love instead of lying awake at night, wondering how you will pay next month's rent. Financial resilience is not about getting rich. It is about removing the chains that bind your mind to worry. It is about buying yourself the most valuable thing money can buy, not cars, not houses, not status, but time. Time to recover, time to grow, time to let compounding work, time to live a life that is not ruled by fear. The pessimist saves because they want freedom from disaster. The optimist invests because they want freedom to grow. Together, these two mindsets do not just protect your wealth, they protect your life. I think about Margaret sometimes, the retired school teacher who went back to work at 70. I do not know what happened to her. I do not know if she eventually recovered, if she found peace, if she ever threw herself another party. But I know this. Her story did not have to end that way. Not because she should have predicted the crash. Nobody could. But because the margin between security and catastrophe is smaller than we think and wider than we build. We cannot control the storms, but we can control the depth of our roots. We can control how much oxygen we carry into the dive. We can control whether we build our house on sand or stone. Winter is coming. It is always coming. But so is spring. And the people who will flourish in that spring are not the ones who predicted the weather. They are the ones who prepared for any weather. The ones who built room for error. The ones who saved like pessimists and invested like optimists. The ones who understood deeply and truly that the goal was never to win every battle. The goal was to still be standing when the war was over. Save like a pessimist. Invest like an optimist. Build room for error. Survive. Because the greatest financial skill is not prediction, it is endurance. And the ultimate reward is not wealth. It is time.